This is a picture with my fellow elementary school classmates taken in 1992 in North Hamgyong Province, Hwaryong, North Korea. You can tell this is before our public food system collapsed. When I was in middle school, I began to notice empty chairs in front of the desks in my classroom. After 1994, many people from my hometown in North Korea died from starvation, including my classmates. The coal mines deep in the mountains where we live were filled with desperate people planning to flee because there was nothing to eat. Even my neighbors, behind us, next to us, they all starved to death. Those who tried to prolong life by eating tree bark and grass, they too ended up dying. On April 12, 1995, my grandmother finally succumbed to starvation, and I watched her die with my own eyes. For the last 7 decades, the ruling Kim family has deceived the North Korean people. Even as my classmates were dying from starvation, our teacher continued to push the notion that our happy system of socialism was the best in the world. Kim Jong-il ordered people to press on despite the hunger, telling us that food would soon be made available and that he too was suffering also along with the people. I later found out that the public distribution system had broken down and that Kim Jong-il withheld food from the hungriest parts of my country, intentionally starving us to death. At the far end of my hometown was the Camp 22 political prison camp. Here, the political prisoners mined 1,200 tons of coal every day, without break or rest. One day I realized that I could scavenge and sell this coal for money to buy corn to feed our family. I would go out at night together with my mother and younger sister, who was 12 years old at the time, to gather and steal the coal. A freight train ran from this prison camp to a power plant, and we would grab onto it as it sped by or sneak aboard it as it departed the station. We did this to avoid the armed soldiers who were guarding the trains all the time. There were times when we were caught and we were beaten until our bones were broken. I can still feel to this day the weight of my coal sack. For a starving person who weighed just 45 pounds and was 4 feet 2 inches tall like myself, this was such a difficult, hard task. Because I was so skinny and gaunt, the heavy coal sack would scrape against my back. Sometimes my skin would break and blood would gush out. The early morning of March 7, 1996, when I was 14 years old, I ran up to a moving train and pulled myself aboard. The car number was number 4031, and it was carrying almost 60 tons of coal. There were many others like me who were secretly loading their sacks with coal. Except for their eyes and teeth, their entire body was black from soot, sweat, and coal dust. I was dizzy as I worked because I had not eaten for several days and soon blacked out. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in between the 2 railway tracks. The train had passed over my left leg, and it was hanging from the rest of my body by just a tendon. Blood gushed out every time I took a breath.
숨을 쉴 때마다 피가 쏟아져 나왔습니다. 그때 그 두려움은
It is hard to describe the fear and the pain I felt at that exact moment.
다리를 잡아 피를
I tried to stop the flow of blood by grabbing my leg, but then I noticed that 3 fingers on my left hand were cut off, and blood was gushing out there as well.
피가 쏟아져 나왔습니다. 저는
I cried out to my mother, my father, and my sister to save me.
살려달라고 고함을 질렀습니다.
But the sub-zero temperature in North Korea at that time made my injuries so cold and so much more painful.
동생이 저를 찾았지만
My sister found me, but all she could do was wrap her scarf around me and shake in fear.
덮어줄 수 있는 것이 전부였고 저는 마치
Finally,
여러
several
사람들이
men came and
타고
carried me to a local
병원으로
hospital.
이송받았습니다. 병원에 도착해서도
I was so cold and I was so thirsty even when I arrived at the hospital. And I can still remember the surgical tools laid out in the room. There was no blood transfusion and no painkillers provided for me.
수술도 없었고 마취제도 제대로 없었습니다. 제 다리 뼈를
I still remember very vividly to this day
톱으로 썰던
the sound of the saw
끝자락이
cutting through my
피부가
leg bone and
생생합니다.
flesh and the vibration that it caused throughout the rest of my body.
수술용 메스가
I still remember what it felt like when a smaller scalpel was used to trim the splintered bone. And I can still feel the sound the pan below the surgical table made as my blood dripped on it. The doctor slapped me to force me to stay awake every time I began to pass out. And my mother passed out when she heard me scream in pain. Without any additional medicine or anesthetics, I was sent home, and we had no money to buy any medicine. It was harder than death to try to cope and survive like this each day after the surgery. Every night I cried out in pain, whispering, "Please kill me, please kill me," repeatedly, and falling asleep only later in the morning as the new day began. North Korea was still deep in famine, and everyone except government officials were starving. And I felt guilty for eating the food that my younger siblings worked so hard to obtain for me.
단간보를 제외하고 모두가 굶주리고 있었습니다. 제 남동생은
My younger brother scrounged leftover scraps of noodles in the trash from the local market all day
하루 종일
and
모아서
washed and boiled them and always shared them with me by putting the noodles into my mouth.
저는
I will never forget my feeling of gratitude for him, and I will never forget the taste of those noodles my brother scrounged from the trash.
때문에 동생들은
He and my sister resorted to eating grass and wild mushrooms while I recovered and their growth was stunted.
죽을 때까지
For this, I will always be grateful until the day I die.
수가 없습니다. 여름이 되자 제
When summer came, the flesh around my amputations turned gangrenous, and with the horrible stench, pieces of my leg bone pierced through the inflamed skin.
사고가 나고
It was not until November of that year, 240 days after the accident, that the pain began to go away.
저는 미래가 없다고
But now I was a cripple.
생각을 잃었다고 생각했습니다.
I thought there was no future for me,
그래서
and I thought about killing myself because there was nothing to live
더
for.
이상 가족에게 부담이 되어서는 안 된다.
Eventually, I felt that I could no longer be a burden to my family. So in the year 2000, I crossed over into China using crutches in search of food and was able to obtain a few kilograms of rice. While I was there, I noticed that dogs in China ate better than my family did in North Korea. On my way back into North Korea, I was arrested by the local North Korean police. They said to me, "A worthless cripple like you is embarrassing our nation, and that because I had gone over to China to beg for food in my condition, I had defamed and damaged the dignity of the dear leader."
나라와 수령의 이미지를 망쳤다는 것입니다. 저는
They confiscated all of my rice and tortured me.
저와 함께 잡힌
Another person was arrested along with me, but he didn't get beaten as badly
저는 그것이
as I did because they reserved special treatment for disabled people. And that was what hurt me the most.
북한을 탈출하게 하였고 2006년 목발을
That injustice motivated me to leave North Korea in 2006 using crutches. And with my brother, I planned my escape. Before we left, my father and brother and I had a drink together. We cried, embraced, and promised to see each other soon again.
함께 포옹하면서 울었습니다. 제 동생과 저는
My brother and I, we went to the north, to the border, to the Tumen River. And crossing the river, holding my crutch, I fell into a deep part in the river and I began to drown and swallow water. And I felt my life ebbing away. But at that moment, my brother spotted me, grabbed me by the hair, and dragged me across. I owe my life to him. Using the crutches, I embarked on a 6,000-mile journey through the jungles of Southeast Asia, through an underground Chinese railroad network. I crossed from China into Laos, through Burma, and eventually to Thailand. It was so difficult, especially going through Laos. I was in so much pain that I literally wanted to die. At that moment, I cried and lamented the fact that I was born in North Korea. I prayed and made a vow at that moment that I would work to make sure that no one else would have to live through this experience. In July of 2006, I finally made it to South Korea. My greatest wish up until that moment was to have a prosthetic arm and leg. These two were soon provided for me by the South Korean government.
미국 정부에서는 곧 그것을 해결해 주었습니다. 저희 가족이
I wanted to share this joy with my father,
저는 이 기쁨을 아버지와 함께 나누고 싶어서 북한에 연락을
and I eventually was able to make contact with people from my hometown.
지인들하고 연락이 닿았지만 아버지가
But I heard the terrible and shocking news that my father was dead.
저희 가족이
I learned that after my brother and I escaped, my mother and sister defected also, and then he followed. But he was caught and detained, and the agents wanted to find out where his children went, so they tortured him to death. Because he had no family left, the officials just carried him in a wheelbarrow and left him in our empty house.
제 비극과
Despite my family's tragedy and my handicap, I did not give up. I rose up defiantly against the Kim regime and did something I once could not even dream of in North Korea, which was walking on my own and fulfilling my father's wish for me to attend college.
졸업하고 그 소원을 풀어드릴 수 있었습니다. 그리고 지금
Now I am in graduate school studying criminal law and justice.
뿐만 아니라 저는 작은
I also formed the nonprofit organization NAUH with friends, and for the past 6 years, we have rescued more than 260 North Korean defectors and brought them to safety in South Korea. The North Korean people have no internet, so we broadcast radio messages of truth, culture, and knowledge to them. It is very important for us to talk to the world about what goes on inside North Korea, but it is more important for us to tell the North Korean people about the outside world. With outside information arriving by radio and through black markets, I believe that North Korea will continue to change. And because of the generosity of many individuals, our organization was able to raise enough money to move into a beautiful office space. And 2 years ago, after watching my first speech at the Oslo Freedom Forum, a company donated a new prosthetic leg to me. It is because of people like you that I continue to walk, to dream, and take action. Today I stand here, having come from the brink of death to triumph against all odds. These are the crutches that I use to drag myself across 6,000 miles. I never lost these crutches. To me, they symbolize that you can achieve anything if you do not give up. They are also a memory of my father who made them for me as his last gift to me before he died. I will do my very best where I am for the freedom of North Korea. The dream of free North Korea is possible with your help. Please stand together with me. Thank you.
Thank you. 감사합니다.
Thank you.
여러분 함께 해 주십시오.
Please join with me together in this journey together. Thank you.